Alright guys, Hatchcrown back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Rostermania is finally back on the menu with the Los Angeles Thieves having some rumours emerging with regard to what they're planning to do with their roster. Nadeshot said just the other day they do want to become a destination for new young players, rookies really, to step into a great first team. But they don't want to build a team of 4 rookies. Rumour has it they're looking at Cammy and Afro, formerly of an underwhelming Minnesota Rocket team last season. Would be a very interesting team they're trying to form over there. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. First of all, wanted to mention this from Optic. I know some people were saying, look, they're doing absolutely everything but the Dynasty podcast. I think it will happen at some point. I know there's various reasons why we don't yet have an episode with Scump, Crim, Formal and Karma. This one's going to be the GOAT show, whatever they say in the background. Probably one of the final big things they're going to record here at the Hex Quarters, right? Because our understanding is that in November, the lease is at an end. The Hex Quarters will go away. They're going to move everything to the offices in Dallas, Texas, right? Where the Envy and now Optic HQ is. But we have Scump, Formal, Karma, and Big Timer. This is going to be phenomenal, I'm sure. And probably the vibes on this are going to be better than they would be if it was Crim here, just because I think things would be, they'd be a little bit awkward, right, if Crim was there a little bit. I think it will happen at some point. I believe the reason why it hasn't happened yet is that Crim doesn't really want to just do it on the Optic channel, and I can kind of understand his perspective, and Hex's point of view is that, well, if we're going to do the Optic Dynasty podcast, it's going to be an Optic show with Optic production on our, on our social media channels, and therefore Crim isn't necessarily going to see any monetary returns in that. I think Crim said that he would be down to do it with those guys, but it would be on his own channel basically. So that's how he wants to make it work. Maybe that'll change over time, but Crim for now at least is holding the line. I think at some point in the future we're going to get the Dynasty episode, but it's not going to happen soon it seems. So we've got Big T on the show instead, but I'm sure this is going to be great stuff. So looking forward to that when it launches. But let's talk Rostermania because it kind of kicked into gear again last night. Firstly with the Priest Subliners thing getting confirmed. If you guys didn't see this yesterday, Subliners have officially parted ways with Priest. He gave his response, and we're going to see more of that actually here in a second. Sib is rumoured to replace him on that team for next season. Octane gives his thoughts on this as well, but I'll also share one clip from Priest on last night's stream, and I believe some were saying that in his chat, his Nightbot said that the video that Priest releases on this will be coming out probably today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, I think, something like that anyway. So Priester has got something ready to just give a little bit more of his side of the story because it's difficult to really piece everything together at this point. And even Priester doesn't seem to have the full information from the other side of the story, which is the Subliners guys and the decisions that his teammates made.
Some players who, this whole, I've talked about it pretty much at length. This whole situation is just so weird to me. This feels like a situation where we're never gonna actually figure out what happened, because it's something involving the players and probably something that is not super straightforward, whether that be they didn't want to play with him or if money was actually involved. Then obviously we'll never figure it out. But this whole situation is just wild to me, thinking as well. I think it's literally I don't want to break up with you, so I'm gonna make you break up with me kind of situation. I don't know. I just don't know why they wouldn't do it themselves, but whatever. I don't know. I've talked about what I think on the move and everything already, but Sib obviously brings more kills, I think. But the argument that I was also making on the flank is Preston is the epitome of the eye test in professional COD. He has obviously the most LAN wins in the CDL era. He's a proven winner, even if he's not putting up 1.2s. Having a guy on your team basically guarantees you a championship at some point. So, I don't know the reasoning of which they wanted to replace him. I don't know if it was personal stuff. I don't know if they literally just wanted 5 more kills a map because that's what it's going to be. But they seem to think that is what they need. So
why you dropping us out? I don't know, bro. Now, like I said, I have a video that I kind of recorded just kind of explaining things from my perspective. Obviously, whatever the NYSL boys want to talk about, they'll talk about. Just because obviously, I knew what was happening in my POV, and I saw a lot of people online and shit saying certain things. So, obviously, I want to clear up exactly kind of what happened. I don't really know fully everything from their perspective, but
So definitely crazy to get dropped in these circumstances. I know that Crimsix had his thoughts on this and said, look, it's not great to get dropped like this, but if you are going to get dropped, now is kind of the best time to get dropped, because at least if you're pre-star, you can, your stock is at an all-time high, really. he's become the most winningest player in CDL history. Every year he's pretty much won something, and has won more events in the last 4 years than Simbabizi and Selim have. So I think it makes sense that Priest is going to get a good offer somewhere. We think it might be Boston with Slasher. That's kind of the current rumor that's been going around over the last few days, but we'll see how that develops over time. The other thing is Clayser, right? Because he was dropped so many times in remarkable circumstances after winning champs a couple of times in a row, and then even that crazy complexity decision where after winning 7 of 8 events in a row on a 4-tourney win streak after the first event in Ghosts, they drop Clay for Karma and actually, you know, either stay the same or get better depending on your perspective. So sometimes you can make crazy changes that actually work out, but Clay obviously did pretty well as a result. Went on to join Optic shortly after this, so I think Priester should find himself in a decent position, and at the end of the day, it's very rare that a team wins champs and actually does much the next season. Thieves became only the first team ever to win an event after winning champs in the following season, so I think it's probably expected that that subliner team, if it did stay together with the other teams upgrading around them, wouldn't have been as competitive as they were before. So I can understand why they want to make this change, preempting the kind of champs curse in some respects, but it's still crazy, right? To make this change voluntarily is the understanding we have. So let's dive into the Thieves thing. I feel kind of bad about this actually, because I had this in the draft and I was like, alright, it's kind of funny, I'll just throw this up on Twitter. But I realised just as I tweeted this out, I refreshed the timeline and Roddy had actually dropped some intel on Thieves. It makes it look like I think this team's going to be terrible because they're maybe looking at getting Cammy, but that's not really what I'm getting at, but we'll see that in a second anyway. This is a funny meme that's been going around for a couple of years, and look, Thieves probably won't be as competitive this year as they have been previously. They had a World Championship winning team. It's unlikely they're going to be able to form a squad to quite that extent again, but how well can they do? We believe the top 4 are going to be the top 4. I think that's probably, it's a very likely possibility, but after that, is it going to be Boston? Is it going to be Rocket? Is it going to be Surge or Thieves, maybe, that build the most competitive team outside of that? Could be someone else, of course, but the rumour has it from CDL Scrim Intel last night that sources say LA Thieves hold an interest in Cammy. The original wording on this left something to be desired. It sources Cammy's interest in him from LAT, so that was changed around and it ended up like this. But this is very interesting, and okay, just because they hold an interest in said player doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sign him, right? It hasn't got to the point yet where Jacob Hale is happy enough to say, like, yeah, this is, you know, here we go type thing, it's going to be happening. So these are just early rumours at this point, but this does make a fair bit of sense, I think, especially given the salaries that they're rumoured to be paying, that certainly aren't as high as some other teams like Boston and others. So the players they'll be able to get are players that, well, probably, at least from their perspective, have high ceilings, but don't have the greatest stock at the moment, right? Like getting a guy like Priester, or let's say Priester or Slasher, formerly of FaZe and Subliners respectively, the money that Thieves are going to be offering, let's say it's, you know, 100k, 140k, there's been some rumours going around about exactly what the salaries are, they're probably not going to be able to compete with what Boston are currently able to pay, and those players that have high stock at the moment are going to probably get, well, command higher salaries than Thieves can presently offer, which is why, you know, Envoy and such has stepped away to go elsewhere. So Thieves need to get players that have potentially high upside, but right now don't have the greatest stock. And the other option is to get rookie players that other teams don't really want to go in for. So Cammy might be a good example of this. He's been underwhelming, it's got to be said, the last couple of seasons. End of season Cold War Cammy was unbelievable, and even Modern Warfare 2019 Cammy was great, and even Black Ops 4 Cammy was great. But the last couple of years hasn't quite been there, let's be honest. Toronto in Vanguard, he wasn't quite the same player that he was the year before, and this year on Rocker it was a bit of a disaster, to be honest, for all involved. As in fairness, seems to happen relatively often with the Minnesota Rockers. Maybe they're going to change things around over there going forward, as they are, right? You know, they're revamping their coaching staff and changing things around. But also, he says that they hold an interest in Afro. So these are 2 players formerly of Minnesota Rocker. Didn't work great for those 2 together last year, let's say. So they might go for one of these 2, they might go for both of them, and we'll talk about who the 3rd and 4th might be in a second, if what Nadeshot said the other day about getting some young rookie players in is still the way they want to move. But Afro, to me, is, if I was making a team, Afro would be one of the first guys I'm speaking to, especially in Thieves' position where you can't pay an extreme amount of money, you don't have the budget for it, but you do want players with high upside. Afro's been a bit of an inconsistent SMG, but when he's on, and he's usually on at the start of seasons actually, got to be said in Vanguard, was really good for London early on. Last year at the start of last season, Modern Warfare 2 was really good for Minnesota Rocker. When he's on point, his ceiling is up there with some of the top SMGs, but is a bit inconsistent. Do I trust Thieves, JCap and Shane to get the best out of Afro, put him in a good environment? I think I probably do. And I'd also quite like to see a world in which Afro's kind of more of like the slaying sub. I talked about the SMG dynamics the other day, the like the Scump Karma thing, the Hydra Kismet thing, and the Symphon Abizi thing, but I'd like to see Afro like more in that slaying role, I think a little bit, rather than being the kind of do-it-all entry sub that sometimes hasn't like favoured him so well. I think he can get caught off guard and basically put in the blender, I think, at times, Afro. So I think like a good SMG partner here will be crucial if Afro's going to be very effective this season, but I think that Thieves could be a great destination for him. So I like what they're going for here, if they go for Cammy and Afro, because those are players that if you get them working well, those guys have very high potential. Obviously there's risk involved, but if you want to form a team that can actually potentially win with the budget they have, there's always risk involved, right? There's risk involved in any team you build. The other question is, what are they going to do outside? Let's say they brought on Cammy and Afro, which is definitely possible, and I know people will say, okay, you need like a veteran IGL AR or something, but in fairness, Cammy's been around a while, and okay, maybe he's not quite considered or perceived to be a leadership type figure, but really he probably should be able to do that, right? He's been around for several years at this point, even pre-CDL. But what's their plan for the rest of the team? Like, I'd be interested to see like Afro and Nero, for example. Like Afro Nero as a duo, I think could be really interesting actually. Like Nero is the faster guy, Afro is the slightly slower guy. I think that could work. Will they do that? We don't know. And then they'll need another AR. The thing is though, Nadeshot said just the other day, we saw it in the episode, we discussed it a couple of days ago, when we talked about the fact that they lost so much money in the Vanguard year. He said that he wants Thieves this season to be a place for, you know, younger rookie players really to come and start their career off on the right foot, implying that they're definitely looking at getting some rookie talent in with high upside, which again is the way to do it. Will they therefore look at the Awobabobs, Awobabobs, however it's meant to be pronounced, because these guys were one of the best teams this season, certainly from the European side. Brezzy and a Cobra actually got released just the other day, so it's still Abuza and Lins as restricted free agents, and some have paired up in their head, and I think potentially for good reason, Abuza Lins with Afro Cammy and form that team of 4 over on the Los Angeles Thieves. Lins is an interesting one because I don't know how good his English is, and I'm not sure it's great, which especially if you want to make Afro comfortable from an SMG perspective, might not be ideal. Abuza, Belgian player, this was a French-speaking team, but Abuza's English is particularly good, and I think there will be other teams interested in him, but given what Nadeshot said about being a destination for rookie players to start to thrive, Abuza and Cammy as an AR combo could, I think, be a very viable one. From an SMG perspective, I'd be interested to see if they would go for Lins, or whether they would go for a guy like, you know, Nero or Vivid or one of the players that I just mentioned. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below, but they're building again from the ground up. But if they get some of these players, if they get Abuza, because Abuza basically had a season last year in Challenges that was very comparable to Scrappy's season in Vanguard, and we know what Scrappy did last year in the actual Pro League. So I think that Abuza would be a great pick for Thieves if they could get him in terms of having that upside. I like the Cammy Afro idea as well. Maybe I'm a bit biased as a European Call of Duty fan, but if they're building from the ground up here with not that much budget compared to some other teams, I think that would be a particularly good off-season, a pretty successful turn of event if they could put that together. There's obviously some risk involved. Intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. But that's pretty much it for today. Thought this was kind of funny here. Like, I don't know exactly how Kenny got this H on his chest here. I think he said it was like dust or something from the back of the ATVs, but it spells out this H here, and you know, FaZe Audacity that replies like, oh, H meaning Hex baby, Optic Texas confirmed, and yeah, he forgot the spicy emoji, but we'll get that in there somewhere. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.